Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome our viewing audience to another session of our Ed Talk series. I am Andrea Ferrari, founder and CEO of Whole Schools International, and together with my partner, Gabriela Gonzalez Pacheco, Director of Programs. Hi, Gabby.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, welcome, Gabby. We have created this innovative space to inspire conversations around education during these unprecedented times. So education is transforming, as we know. And at Whole Schools, we do believe that it is equity, well-being, and happiness that will take this transformation through a sustainable change, one that is future-proof and that will face the challenges of the short and the long-term consequences. And it is for that reason that we gather here with educational experts that can guide us with their international perspectives, guide our educational communities, and together we can co-create the new landscape for education. So today we are super happy to welcome Jill Akers-Clayton from Colorado. Jill is a senior learning designer at Fielding International. She's also a project-based learning author. Her book, published in 2017, Developing Natural Curiosity Through the Project-Based Learning, describing 5 strategies for the pre-K through 3rd grade classroom. And Jill is also at Principled Learning Strategies. She's an educational consultant and spends a lot of her time traveling over 30 states in the US, and she's been in over 20 different countries, designing learning environments, promoting community engagement, leading workshops for teachers, for school leaders, for students. And we're super excited to have Jill here today to talk to us about learning environments and what the essence in these environments are at the center where all students thrive. So I'd like to welcome Jill from Colorado. Hi.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Gabby. It's an honor to be here and work alongside you. I'm thrilled. I've spent most of the day in workshops with teachers and yesterday with students. And so it's really spending our days thinking about what is at the heart of a learning environment. And that's really my passion and what drives my work every day. And so it's not really a job when it's your passion. So.
That's so well said. I know from our previous talks that you're passionate about learner-centered environments and constructivist methods that take these forward. And you described it so beautifully earlier. I wonder if you could, for our viewing audience, maybe put into words what would be at the heart of a learning environment where our students are thriving.
Absolutely. Interaction and relationships take center stage at the heart of a learning environment, creating an environment that's really focused around human-centered skills and the problem-solving resources that our students need, and giving them an opportunity to really co-create and co-voice their concerns for the world and for the future. I think that learning environments cannot be generated any longer on what some still call a traditional Horace Mann model, where it's a rectilinear building with corridors and these cells and bells models, where students go into a room and they're locked in there all day with the same people and the same adults or the same adult. And really, how do we develop the critical human skills that all learners need so that they're active participants in an environment that doesn't put you typically in one room all day and really not receiving the support from multiple adults and multiple interactions. And so, schools designed, moving school design from the old traditional model to this new non-traditional model is not how we want to look at it. We want the non-traditional model to become the norm, to become the tradition. And so that way, these traditional methods are student-centered. And so really, a learning environment is an ensemble of spaces, small group spaces, medium-sized seminar conference room spaces that accommodate what our new traditional is, a virtual and in-person learning environment that really honors that as adults, our skill sets are around solving problems. It's around tackling life and making the world a better place. And so how do we take a learning environment and honor that kids want to be part of the complexity that's happening in their world? And so I think when we talk about thriving in a modern learning environment, it's really about relationships and the interaction of those relationships and really providing that.
Well, Jill, when you say that, do you think a lot of teachers are complaining now about how students seem apathetic? There's a lack of motivation, a lack of engagement, and sometimes I think it's not so clear for educators how, when students are not at the center, it's very difficult for them to be motivated and engaged. So do you think this it is a correlation between those two?
I think that's a fantastic question. And I've spent the last year, since last February, and we started, and COVID started, I've spent the time working with teachers to really take project-based learning and what's at the heart of project-based learning, which is authentic, relevant, and complex real-world challenges, and virtualizing that for students. And so, we're seeing students who are engaged. We're seeing students who are solving problems in a virtual way, and that they're motivated the same way they would be motivated around content when it's real. And so I think that it's the challenge is really looking at the design of pedagogy, not in a reactive way, which a colleague of mine and I were talking about earlier today, but more of in how do we design instruction with a new perspective based on the values and the experiences and culture, and that we can't take what we did in the classroom and just upload it in a virtual way and expect motivation and engagement when our home environments are not equitable. And they're not designed in the way the school building is, so when we talk about students paying attention and staying focused, home is designed, it's an ensemble of spaces that are designed around how humans live and how they think and function. And if we don't train our students, just like we don't train our adults, how to use the ensemble of spaces to really promote and elicit the kind of thinking we're anticipating around real work, it's very challenging for kids to be able to understand how to be successful in their space.
Well, that's a very complex answer and grounded. First of all, you started by thinking about the child's voice. And boy, have we heard from students. I think our sessions are always, they've really been filled with enthusiasm and energy when we've brought students in front of the screen to the Ed Talk series, because their voices are unrelenting, they are clear, and they can proclaim their power to co-create, you use that word as well, to co-create a society that is more just, that is more caring, and that is more inclusive. You also use the word equity, and so I love how you articulated that. I also think it's about creating context, becoming socially conscious. Just last week, we had Tom Wingate from a British international school in Mexico. He's at the Wingate School, and he spoke a lot about having the kids become aware of group needs, empathizing, and engaging, what you said, Jill, with the real world, understanding interdependence and not being locked into the classroom and going beyond the borders or the walls of the school. So I love what you said, Gabriela, about the psychological environment being as important as the physical one. And maybe that could lead us into our next question, Jill. I love when you talk about what our environments need to look like, sound like, feel like, to promote this belonging, this essence of, relationships and interaction being at the heart of environments where students thrive, maybe translates into that belonging piece. So how would we do that? You being such an expert in design and just the vision that you have.
Well, a lot of it comes through, trial and error of my own, and really thinking about what relationships and interactions need to happen in order to really promote belonging and full potential. And so, I'm honored that I've had amazing mentors and leaders who have let me experiment, who have let me make mistakes, and raised the metacognitive moments, and then gave me the growth producing feedback that I needed to move forward. And so when we think about what these environments look like, feel like, and sound like, they should look chaotic. They should look quiet. They should look independent, and they should look group worthy. And they should involve moments of growth producing feedback. It should involve where students are active participants. So we should see students engaging through real content, that real content, but understanding that the complexity of life is what's going to bring that content alive. And when we want learning environments to be alive, and we want kids not only to remember content, regurgitate it for a text, that's not what we want. We want to create experiences in an environment that prepare them with the skill sets and the competencies through real work to be able to go into the future and be successful. And so that means really reimagining the reciprocal relationship between the environment and giving students agency and ownership. That's what it looks like, where students own the environment just as much as the teachers, but there is still a private space for adults and for students. In my work, we design sometimes from the ground up in a full-scale master plan with an independent school or a public school district. We don't provide learning environments. You won't see them looking like a traditional hallway with classrooms coming out of it. It's a learning community. And teachers don't own a classroom. They have a private teacher collaborative workroom where they do their work, but that the suite of spaces that they're provided, students have ownership over that. And I think when we pull ownership out of the process of learning, what we don't see anymore is the student's voice. So what it looks like is an agentic suite of spaces that students have ownership over. What it sounds like is students involved in group work, individual work that is embedded with their complex content. And complex content starts the moment we're born, and it never stops. And so we as humans in our educational design have taken what content we think should happen when and where, but content never ends. And just like adults, we need acoustical support. So what it sounds like is really important. And when we design buildings and we think about the learning environment, the first thing that gets valued engineered out are the acoustical supports to engage in high quality dialogue, not discussion like back and forth, you talk about this and then I share my story, but real meaning, dialogue that has real meaning. Kids need the environments that are acoustically treated. They need to be comfortable. They don't need the same plastic chair from when they were in kindergarten until they were in high school. That's really good for our back surgeons and our chiropractors. That's what we're giving them is business. But when we design an environment that is around how humans think throughout the day and use their space and solve problems, that feels like comfort. It feels like movement. Why can't students appropriate the types of seating and furniture and spaces that help them think? And why don't we allow students to own that? And we do have, I don't want to take anything away from the amazing teachers that I've worked with. We have a lot of phenomenal teachers and who've got phenomenal curriculum, and their environments are getting in the way. And how do we push out those environments and open up the walls and create that so we redesign what we value? I mean, it's about the assets that we value when we talk about what that environment looks like, feels like, and sounds like. It should feel joyful. You know, I'm working with an amazing school district in Cranston, Rhode Island. And when we do our work through master planning and really reimagining spaces and physical buildings, we really get to know the community. As a group of architects and educators, thinking about kids thriving doesn't mean a cool architect coming and putting an awesome building out there and then shoving in curriculum and teachers and kids. We start with the human. We start with the child and we start with the humans that are growing. Teachers are growing. They're the most learner-centered people I've ever known. And as a teacher, I'm honored to work alongside so many. But we want them to design their space around their culture, around their community and what they value. So how do we redesign the assets that we value within that learning environment? And that also means outside of the learning environment. If we don't create a space for industry experts and community partners within a school, how are we saying that we value authentic, relevant, and complex real learning and problem solving? So I think when we talk about a sense of belonging and full potential, I promise I'm going back to what you said, it has to include ownership, and it has to include the real values of that community. And it has to be shared and co-created with adults and with kids. I hope I've answered that in that.
Jill, do you think that maybe it's a problem of, maybe through this crisis, educators, and I'm talking about teachers and parents, are not that clear anymore of what they're educating for? I mean, thinking about the future outlook and this whole crisis, I think before it was much easier, not necessarily that it was realistic, but it was much easier to visualize what we wanted what we wanted to prepare them for. And now with all of these changes, maybe it's just a lack of reflection of where we're going and what does this mean and how are the changes going to impact this. Mm-hmm. So certainly designing a learning space that will guide you towards that goal is very difficult because you're not even sure of what that goal is anymore. Would you think so?
Well, and I think when we're looking at this globally collective upending of everything we deem as normal, that we have a rare and wonderful opportunity to reevaluate. And no, nobody has any idea. And I think that when we look at school design and learning environment design, we have to go back to the human element and humanize what buildings are for. And they're there to bring people together and shelter them from the environments and give them a safe space to work together and to solve problems. So I think that we have a rare opportunity to be able to reimagine a new normal and not go back to what's normal. not to use that new normal, which has become, but I think we have to look at schools that are non-traditional and make them the traditional norm, because the knowledge-based skill sets we know are not supporting students in an equitable way that promotes social and emotional wellness. There are so many kids who have dropped off the face of education, and we don't know where they are. We don't know what they're doing. So how do we look at the school building itself as a whole new environment that supports their health and wellness, their happiness? And we do that through allowing kids to take part in their learning. So if that means we don't the assets that we value are not these, test driven environments and these high stakes testing for teachers, which causes them to really struggle with, I know what's right for my kids, but I have to also feed my own kids. And I think this is a real grounding for us as humans when making the connection now between what really happens in a school and what really happens at home. And so how do we start to blur the lines between that? I think will help alleviate some of the unknown. My favorite line is, life is about simmering in ambiguity, and we're never going to know what's around the corner. So my trivial pursuit fact may not get me through an ambiguous situation, but if I can honor and support myself and my peers through the problem-solving process, and I'm empowered with those skills, any type of ambiguous situation in the future, kids have the ability to build trust with their peers and who they're problem solving with through not only the competent knowledge that they bring to the table, but really their character, the skills that they bring to help solve problems together. And I think that when we're talking about the connection and the uncertainty, we have to start putting trust in the skills that we value for kids in the future, because we don't know what's going to happen. And that it's okay for kids to learn online and to have hybrid environments, and that we don't all have to be in a building to be successful, and we can blend those environments and honor that that's done through character and competence.
Well, that was a really profound and deep answer, reaching in the depths of what we treasure most and hold at our heart. But I rescue from that a couple things. One, you keep talking about this ambiguity. We don't know where we're headed. So it brings to mind this idea about skills and not being taught to the trivial pursuit facts or answers, and be prepared more to be adaptable. We had a conversation this morning, or was it yesterday, with your colleague. She's so fond of you, Amaris Salazar.
Amaris. I love her.
Los Taubos, and she's in Cartagena, actually.
Yeah.
And so we spoke of you. We quoted you, and she admires your work. And one of the things that she was discussing with us was that, it doesn't really matter where we're going and things are ambiguous. What matters most is equipping and building in these kids the toolkit, those 21st century skills that they're going to need to face any kind of adversity, right? And we know that to be that thing about adaptability, resilience, and collaboration. What you just said about them being able to trust and feeling like they belong with each other, and that very close, that bonding that happens among the peers and also among the adults. And it can happen, as you said, anywhere, in a virtual, in a hybrid, back in the brick and mortar. But for that, we need to develop then those skills, the adaptability, the resilience, so that they can face any scenario. And that calls to mind our next point here. And you touched upon it a little bit. You talked about the social emotional wellness and going back to the core, to the human, to the child, and And this aspect then makes me think about what you think might be the keys for us as we think about structuring an environment that is supportive. What is the kind of language that we need to hear? What are the kind of things that we need to see, whether we're home, back in the classroom, or doing both? This blended idea, I love that you mentioned. But how do we create that support and that motivation in either one of those fronts would be my question.
Absolutely. I think there are three really distinct key elements that we as adults focus on in our own work and learn environments, and helping kids and teachers transfer some of this to be supportive and motivating in a virtual environment. I think the first one is sensory cognition, the second one being agentic work, and then the third one being micro collaborations. And so what I mean by sensory cognition is goes back to what we said earlier, that if we think about the built environment, when teachers curate a space, they use their walls, they use their chairs, they use everything in a classroom environment to curate a sense of safety and trust and wellness. And they use that space to help engage. So we go back to the third teacher. Your walls can speak to you. Blocking of chairs and creating of zones in a classroom can speak to you. Well, that's a sensory cognitive experience. And if we take kids into schooling environments when they're virtual and we don't curate or help them curate a space and set themselves up for success, we run into a lot of challenges. Therefore, we can think about, I can think about one child that we've been working with, and she's at the kitchen table with 4 other siblings, and we're in a meeting, and 3 of them are eating bowls of cereal, a couple of them are laughing and playing around and having fun and doing great things, while one is trying to take a test. And so how do we think about the ways in which students set themselves up for success, and adults, when they work in a virtual environment? I have a workspace that has the resources I need. It has power. It has pens. It has pencils, coffee cups from when I'm done this morning, and I haven't taken it down yet. So, but in the sense that you have to create that sensory cognition and really understand the kinds of movement and freedoms that our learners have in their home environments, or the freedoms that they don't have. And how do we then allow that child to say, okay, I need to appropriate this space to be successful? Because in the built environment, when they're attending school, that's typically done for them. And they don't even think about that process. And so how often you take a bathroom break? Whereas, in schools, in many schools, and even in my daughter's own schools, last year, they had 3 opportunities to use the bathroom during the day. And that was it. And you couldn't use, there were like blackout times for when you couldn't use the bathroom. And so when my kids started their virtual schooling last February, I had my 9-year-old take her iPad in the refrigerator. Literally, she set her iPad on the shelf in her refrigerator in the middle of class and was sitting there snacking. So we had a long talk about how do we create our own environment for success. So I think that the keys to structuring that begin with understanding your environment. And for some people, that means, for some students, that means, are you most successful in your pajamas? You are? Great. Mm-hmm. Then how do we set that piece up? And then when it comes to schoolwork and really thinking about agentic production, we still have a lot of teachers who are just taking worksheets and turning them into screen sheets. So if you're still worksheeting your kids, it's just all on the screen. And if you're not wearing blue glasses, your eyes might get pretty tired. So how do we really create authentic and agentic products, or give students choice in the way that they're approaching their work and what's better for them? And that could go as far as collaboration with others. It could be independence. How do you define what that looks like? But we don't have to focus on your work needs to be 12-point font, double spaced, and how do we embed skills inside these agentic products so kids can really demonstrate what they know and what they can do? And it's not just about the visual piece, or it's about the choice. And then you have to have quality behind the visual, but I think that choice. And the third one, and I promise I won't go too long, is really about micro collaborations. We have to allow kids to collaborate. We have to have short bursts of interaction. And without that, kids lose that touch, the ability to talk with their peers. We've had micro collaborations, even through text online and getting to know each other. It can't just be, I'm going to teach a 40-minute lesson. You get 10 minutes to engage with each other. Time, when I work with teachers and we think about a chunk of time, say it's a 55-minute class period, students should be talking 80% of the time, adults 20%. And so with that, I'm going to drop down to my 20% and hand it back to you guys. But I think
oh, Jill, and all in good time, right, Gabby? Because we've got about 1 minute left to say our thanks and goodbyes. I love the way that you leave us with this notion that students need to understand, and that comes with agency, right? That they have the power, the ability to make a difference, and that they can also be a part of change. And these closing remarks and these, I think, little pieces of advice that you've left us with of how to set up our environment and be mindful about even bathroom breaks and snacking time and how I feel more comfortable maybe in my PJs. All those really matter. And there are things that you can't see across the screen. So thank you for bringing that back to the tangible, making that concrete, and leaving us with some real advice that we can start to apply as soon as tomorrow morning. Any last closing remarks from you, Jill, or you, Gabby, before we say our goodbyes?
Just thank you for allowing me to work with you too. Has been amazing. I'm honored. I appreciate it.
Well, we hope to see a lot more of you, right, Gabby?
Yes, I think what you said, it will be very helpful for people who are listening to us, and we just need to continue reflecting on this. As you said, take the opportunity that is being given to us and just take advantage of it and make the best of it, right?
I love that. I love what you said, and thank you for remembering it. A rare and wonderful opportunity has been given to us, and we need to take this time to reevaluate. Thank you for bringing that to our attention today, Jill. And
absolutely. And I got the rare and wonderful from a teacher named Scott McCombs. So I don't want to leave the show without giving him credit that he reminds me that time with kids is a rare and wonderful opportunity too.
Oh, thank you. What is his name?
Scott McCombs. He's an engineering teacher. So,
well, thank you for mentioning him. We're honored. And thanks again, Jill, for sharing all of your expertise. And we will see you again very, very soon. So goodbye over to all the folks watching. Hope you have enjoyed, and we'll see you next week. Hugs all the way to Colorado. Keep safe, everyone.
You guys too. Thank you.